Mhm.
As kind of typical of Christian men or men in general, there's a really strong epidemic of, addiction to pornography and all these other things
Mhm.
like lust and, fornication that, it's just so normalized in our culture today. And for me, I have been addicted for, I mean, I would say my whole life since like maybe exposure at like first grade up until adulthood, and
Mhm.
that was a battle that I
Wow.
faced
Yeah.
every single day, every single year, day in, day out. There was always that temptation. There was always that endless cycle of like, sinning, not sinning, sinning, not sinning, going back and forth. And when I moved home, and I moved home in August, and then I basically from August to March, kind of struggled, same thing as normal, nothing different,
Mhm.
uh, but through that process, August to March, each Sunday was calling me to repentance, and it's just crazy how he works because it gets more and more specific each time, and it becomes undeniable, that he is trying to tell you something. And at this point, I was running from the Lord because I was afraid of like what it all meant, like what it meant, like,
Mhm.
what would the consequences be? What would the fallback be? In March, I was deliberate because March 6th was when I surrendered my heart and my life to the Lord again. And ever since then, completely different, like
Yeah.
that, what the scriptures talk about when you surrender your heart and God gives you a new one, that is absolute truth,
Mhm.
right? And scriptures and all the weeks leading up to that point was all about heart posture and changing and what surrender does look like. And like I said, there's the breadcrumbs that he was leading me to,
Mhm.
to that one specific point where it was a Tuesday morning and I woke up and I read my Bible app, the verse of the day, like I normally do before I read. And the verse was saying, I think it was in Isaiah, and it was saying, do not be afraid, for I, the Lord your God, am with you. I think it's Isaiah 41. And I was just like, okay, I hear you, like loud and clear, And then I remember like just bursting out into tears because I think I had finally come to acceptance and like I guess come to terms with like what he's asking, and like I out loud agreed to him. But it was just a fact for me that I just felt like his voice was getting louder and louder. And then I was just like, okay, I can't run from this anymore.
Mhm.
So I said it out loud. I was like, okay, God, I'll do this, but you have to help me, because I don't know how to do this on my own. And then started the process of renewal, like he met me where I was, all the fear and all the other stuff that kind of came with it, like the mental battle and, the recall of, who you used to be, like all the things that you used to struggle with, it gets thrown back in your face. That's like a big mental war. We know, as believers, the majority of the battle is in our head, you know?
Yeah. The
So,
battle we fight with isn't flesh and blood, but it's powers and
yeah,
principalities, the
yeah,
spiritual forces of darkness.
1000%. And God really met me where I was at. And, like even with certain relationships where I felt like it was like affected too. But he met me, I surrendered my heart. He gave me a new one. He gave me one full of desires for him and his word and, his church. And, you know, I'm boasting in him now. This is nothing that I could have done because, like I said, I've been struggling with it since first grade, since exposure. And I've never once been able to truly break free. I may have had like some periods where, like, through sheer effort of myself, I probably went maybe a month free, or not doing it. But man, like, it really just goes to show that, um, you know, the one aspect of my walk that I was missing with God was surrender.